I'll give you all some more examples of the difference between conservative and liberal mentality. So I want to make it clear there's nothing wrong with being conservative. Conservative can be fine if you know sometimes it's appropriate to implement uh, policies that maintain structure and order. That's what the conservatives do. Sometimes that's appropriate, but what I'm talking about is a conservative mentality when it's blaming the victim and a judgmental and immature, selfish-oriented mentality, fixed mindset mentality. And that's what Jesus says, don't judge. That's not the flow. So let me first explain like what Nietzsche talked about. Nietzsche talked about that people use religion as a mode to get power. So for instance, let's say someone can't get any girls. He can become religious and then say, yeah, well, I'm not getting any girls, but it's okay. I do that because I'm going to go to heaven now because I don't have sex. And all those guys who are having a bunch of sex are not going to go to heaven. And that can make him feel powerful, even though he doesn't have power. It's a paradox. But so Nietzsche says it's just a way for people to try to get power. Some guy, he's not doing good in this world. So he says, okay, well, I'm just going to meditate and I'm going to get nirvana. And I'm actually doing better than those rich people because the rich people they're entrenched in the material world. So, but I'm better because I'm just gonna meditate and I'm not like them. They're stuck in material suits, but I'm just gonna meditate and I'll get nirvana. You see that with Hare Krishna people. Okay, I'll just do the Hare Krishna, and even though I'm not rich or even though I'm not successful or getting girls and stuff, I'm actually superior because I'm gonna get nirvana or I'm gonna get a good reincarnation. That's still the ego oriented. They're still focused on the self, and it's just a power trip. It's a way for them to get power. Now, the idea is the flow is an authentic oneness consciousness, and not putting down meditation or not putting down any religious rituals, but the idea with the flow that my grandpa teaches me in metapsychiatry is that with the flow, you don't do it in order to try to be superior. You don't meditate to be superior. Or you see that with the meditated people meditating like, oh yeah, oh I get all this money because I meditate, or oh I'm so bad. That's self-indulgence, but you do it as a mode of ritual, and that can help you to transcend that self preoccupied mentality into the flow where, like when I said when I played basketball, when I was in the flow, I'm not even aware of myself, and that's why I was so good. And that's that level you want to be at, but you don't ironically want to be at. It's just that level that you can be at where things are perfect. So that's the idea of Nietzsche. And Machiavelli talked about kind of the same thing. He said that the people use religion just for power. So he's saying the Catholic Church, they just use it to get power. And that's true. There's a lot of religious people who do it just to get power, just to lord it over people. Nietzsche could say, like, another example would be like the people who would go into become monks. People could say that goes against ideas of genetic Darwinism, like, and they could say, yeah, the reason why they become, the idea that people would forfeit their opportunity to have children and stuff, that is proof against the tenets of Darwinism, because those people are neglecting their ability to produce offspring in the future generations. But another person could say, no, well, look at it like the beehive. There's some bees, like the worker bees, that choose not to have children, but they're helping out the rest of the bees by not having children and just working, but they share genes with other bees. So a lot of times the people going to the covenants were to become ministers or whatever, to become priests, were the second born sons. A lot of them are actually homosexuals. And according to because second born sons are most of the time, a lot of times, more often prone to be homosexual oriented, to be attracted to men. And the idea is, evolutionary biologists say that homosexuality is actually a strategy for the genes, where homosexuals, they will help their sisters have children, so they can have more children in future generations that biologically, and then they will also help their community to survive. So that by becoming something like a monk, because the monk maintains order within the community, he's forfeiting his capacities to have children, but he's also helping his older brother, and the other members of society. So they get rid of their mating opportunities, but by doing so, they're actually helping the other men to have more mating opportunities. And a lot of them are homosexuals anyways, according to that theory. Um, And you could say the same thing with like war. People will send people off to war, and there's already a genetic Darwinian strategy to want war because people in their tribal times would want war to protect their tribe. So that's already implemented within people, programmed within people. But then the upper class sends the poor to war to kill them off, so then they can have more mates. And same thing with sending the second born sons of the covenants, so that the older sons can have more mates. And it maintains order within society, and the people will willingly give up their genes for the society because they share genes with the members of their society, and that was since tribal times. So that's a genetic Darwinian framework behind it all. But what I'm talking about now is the idea, though, is yes, there is genetic Darwinism. There is these aspects of reality, but people don't need to be enslaved by them, and people can upgrade their consciousness above levels of self and preoccupation and conservative mentalities that are actually not effective for them or for others, because like I said, fixed mentality, conservative mentality, that doesn't actually help you. That doesn't help anybody. It creates division, and it doesn't, when you're thinking about your IQ, how smart you are, then you're not working as hard sometimes. The best thing is to give people the growth mentality of, it doesn't matter how smart you are or whatever, just work your hardest, do your best in whatever you do, and don't judge people, and be humble. So the idea behind this, okay, so let's analyze some people with conservative mentality and the liberal mentality. So one example would be like David Duke. David Duke is a big white supremacist, and he talks a lot about genetic Darwinism. So I would listen to him talking with a bunch of guys, a bunch of other white supremacists, and they were talking about how they were saying like, oh yeah, the reason why blacks are more criminal and stuff is because they grew up in Africa and they had tribes and they had survival strategies that were more individualistic about killing your enemies and then taking more women, and they evolved more tendencies to be more criminal and to be more violent and stuff. So they're that's a conservative mentality that they're saying this is ingrained, this is a part of their nature, there's inborn, nothing we can do about it, and that's justifying the stratification. So they're saying, but the white people, we're on the top because we're more moral, we have better genes. But then what white supremacists always do is they want to make themselves out to be the good guys. So then they'll say, and David Duke in the next video, so I'm listening talking about this with some people, but then the next video he's talking about, I'm not racist. Yeah, dude, you're racist. You're dumbass. But he's like, I'm not racist. I'm a race realist. I just recognize that there's differences in races, and I recognize, and I actually want to help the black people by letting them be with themselves, and help the white people by letting them be with themselves. I recognize the differences, and so we're better off on our own. And that's what the Republicans believe. That's why they like the Nazism stuff. That's why they have the Nazi flags and why they have the Confederacy flags, because that's their whole thing. And they believe in genetic differences. So, but the idea though is a liberal is going to say there's overlap, and also, you're blaming the blacks for being criminal and stuff, but look at the economic conditions. It's a fact that when people are brought up in poor economic conditions, their cortisol levels are higher. Sapolsky talks about this. Sapolsky is a Jewish biologist, and you could say, okay, remember, the group you belong to can affect your beliefs, so you might think that you might be more liberal because of that. That might be the case, but his research indicates that people who are poorer, they have higher cortisol levels, they have higher stress, and this affects them. And this makes them more prone to violence. Also, the fact that they don't have the same opportunities, they don't have the same wealth, they're going to be more often going to be stealing or hurting each other, and they're not having the same educational opportunities. And so this is what a liberal is going to look at. He's going to say that's why there's more violence among black people. But then what the white supremacists will say is, well, why are they in the poor positions in the first place? It's because of their genes. But then the liberals are going to say, no, it's because you took them from Africa, you immediately labeled them, gave them labels of being inferior, called them black, which is, they weren't called black before. That's kind of a social construction, that they were named black, and then said that they were defective, and then it's a feedback cycle. And then that was maintained through redlining and through societal structures, and used by, the group in power, the people with the wealth, encouraged the poor whites to want division between them and the blacks. in order to maintain the power structure. So this is what a liberal is going to say. And then so now we're having this is the dynamic that's going on between those ideologies. And and I'm not saying that everybody's equal. That's dualistic. That's focusing on the self still. But somebody in the flow is not going to be focused on, oh, I'm better, I have higher IQ, or and judging people based off of superficial qualities. But they're going to look at people as individuals, and they're going to say, yeah, some black people are more like some white people are more like some black people, and we don't have to have these rigid structures. And even this fixed mindset, this conservative mindset, is not helping anybody. Let's, and yes, there's some women who are more agreeable, they could say, okay, but also there's social factors that influence women to be the way that they are, and there is discrimination, there is prejudice. And what we can't change the biological aspects of people, but what we can do is we can help to move beyond the prejudicial mindsets that are not even accurate to reality per se in most cases. And we can move toward a more mentality of, hey, let's not focus on superficial qualities, but let's focus on what we can do to improve the environment and encourage people to work hard. And like I said, there's that coach that I had who talked about, like, oh, black people are he's so gifted. That guy's so gifted. Oh, the white people, they work so hard. And he's trying to ingrain that mentality, that fixed mentality, the stereotypical mentality, as opposed to trying to see, not trying to enforce that rigid ego structure maintenance, so conservative mentality. So this is what David Duke's all about. Then now let's quickly look at, like, the black Hebrew Israelites though. So the black Hebrew Israelites are black guys who say that they're Israel, but again, they have the fixed conservative mentality. And I used to think that they were white supremacists, and I've heard other black people say that they thought that they were white supremacists too, even though they're black. Like, one of them was like light skinned, and some black guy went up to him and he said, well, you're light skinned, man. Like, are you sure you're not like a white supremacist? And that's what I thought too when I was listening to him. But the thing is, it doesn't really matter what his motivation. He might be he might like really like the white people, but the fact of the matter is, we have to look at what he's talking about. What he's saying is that white people are devils and white people are genetically inferior and stuff. So he's using the same fixed mentality, that same conservative mentality, the labeling mentality, the stereotype mentality, and that so he belongs to the black group, and this is his belief system, but it's still within the framework of this prejudicial, stereotypical, simplified reality, where he's saying, oh, all white people are this way. And what that does is then the white supremacists look at it and say, see, look, they're bad, they hate us, and then that can reinforce their desire to maintain the divisions and maintain their mentality of that. It doesn't justify it. A lot of white people say, oh, well, the reason why we're conservative is because of the liberals are so crazy and stupid. And okay, that's not really a justification. You can implement conservative policies, but it doesn't justify, like, the Trump type, where you belittle people and you look down upon people and you impose upon people stereotypes. So what happens with the black people Israelites is they do the same type of thing though, and they're maintaining that same type of consciousness, and then that perpetuates the same type of system. So they're saying, oh, black people or white people are stupid. And then they'll also say, ironically, they'll do the same thing the white supremacists do. And they'll say, like, oh, Arabs, they're evil. The Muslims they're pagan idol worshippers. That's what the white supremacists do. The Christians, to maintain, and you could say that some of them are white, they belong to the white race, so they want to maintain beliefs that perpetuate the divisions between Arabs and white people, in order for them to try to help perpetuate and preserve their race. And then so they adopt a fixed, rigid belief system. But that's what the black Hebrew Israelites do too. And so they'll say, yeah, the Arabs are evil and the Arabs are pagan idol worshippers and stuff. On a quick side note, like, I asked my grandpa about this, and he was saying, like, when the Arabs do circle the Kaaba stone, that's not idol worship necessarily, but what it is they're doing a kind of meditation. That Buddhists will walk around and do a meditation. And the idea behind these rituals is that they're designed to help people transcend themselves by walking, meditating, going around in a circle. Now, within this ritual, any type of ritual, you're taken out of your habits, your circumstances, and your relationships with other people, and in your regular modes of thinking, your ego dualistic modes of thinking, and then this can help any of these rituals can help bring about a meditative state where you transcend yourself, and then hopefully that can help you to break out of these conservative types of mentalities, these self-preoccupied mentalities. And then you could be more open to the flow and intuition and oneness consciousness. That's the idea behind that. But the Black Hebrew Israelites are saying, oh, dude, they're idol worshippers. And then so what they're doing is they're maintaining that same type of division mentality, and that mentality of, oh, and also they're, yeah, it might be true. Arabs are genetically related to white people, because only one group left Africa, according to genetic biologists, evolutionary biologists, and everybody outside of Africa is all interbred. So that's why Black people have a lot more genetic diversity altogether, and why people could say that they're more strong and more that type of stuff in general. But and then Black people say, yeah, Arabs did harm Black people. But the thing is, that's what the white people say too, and the white people say that in order to justify them harming the Black people. Oh, we're not that bad. It was the Arabs who did it. That doesn't justify you doing it either. And it's not that you guys are evil. It's just that you had primitive consciousness at that time. It's ancient times, a long time ago. You didn't have good education. You didn't have the understanding of, basically they're trying to blame the victim again, too, and say the Arabs are bad. And they're saying, oh, the reason why we do bad things to the Arabs is because, they themselves are evil. Or everybody's evil. Everybody's evil. So let's just all kill each other, That's what they're trying to say. But what the Black Hebrew Israelites do is they maintain that same idea, like, oh, the Arabs, they're also genetically inferior, and according to the Bible, they're Ishmael, and Ishmael is not even that good, and they're still maintaining that the stereotypical dualistic labeling people and stereotyping people. So it doesn't help, and then they justify violence. So they'll say, yeah, we're going to enslave the white people. And so again, that's that type of domination mentality, conservative mentality. They deserve it. They're evil. And then the white people who are white supremacists look at them and they say, oh, well, okay, well then when we just enslaved you, then that was fine then. So it reinforces that stuff. So then the white people can say, oh, so what we did was okay. It wasn't bad. And they can also blame the victim. The reason why we enslaved you guys is because you guys are violent like this. Because you Black Hebrew Israelites want to kill us, and that's why we enslaved you back then, because you're violent. And that's why we're going to re-enslave you, So again, this is that conservative type of mentality where we're labeling people. Whereas a liberal is going to say, okay, listen, the white people are not necessarily bad. Black people are not necessarily bad. It's people aren't necessarily bad by virtue of the way that they look. Yes, there's white people who have a non-advanced type of mindset, where they label people and they justify what they did, and they victim blame, and they're immature. And there's also Black people who are immature, and a lot of that has to do with growing up in the ghetto and these things that were implemented by insecure, immature white people. Okay, we can't do anything about what happened. We can't do anything about the genetic Darwinism stuff that maybe there. But what we can do is we can increase education, and we can break people out of this rigid conservative mindset, and we can acknowledge environmental factors. Okay, a lot of these white people themselves are poor. They have higher cortisol levels. They were not educated either. Like, let's not blame the victim. Let's not say white people are evil. Let's not say Black people are evil. Let's not say anybody's evil. Even the rich people aren't evil. Some rich people do have a conservative type of mentality that's not constructive. But also there's rich people who have a very open, healthy mentality, and who aren't stuck up and aren't conceited. So it doesn't help to judge people or label people, but what it helps is for you to be able to see what's going on and try to break out of these rigid frameworks of consciousness and being. Oh, and then like the Black Israelites will also be racist against Jews and be like, oh yeah, they're Khazars, and they're like basically the same thing as white supremacists, but it's that same mentality because it's the same thing, blaming people, trying to look down upon people, looking at superficial qualities, and trying to be the top dog and trying to be, but it leads to a lot of confusion, it leads to a lot of chaos, and it's not helpful in the end. It's not really accomplishing much. So, but instead what we can do is we can look at environment, we can look at all these factors that can be remedied. We can't do anything about someone's genes, his IQ, his this or whatever. But what we can do is we can increase the level of the surroundings in which people are immersed. Yeah, and then the Black Hebrew Israelites also talk about like, oh yeah, we shouldn't race mix and stuff, and that's exactly what the white supremacists want. It's the same type of mentality, and they say it was because they're inferior, they're like dogs. Well, it's the same, but we can understand it more from the Black Hebrew Israelites because Black people have been the marginalized group. We have to look at the actual environmental factors. They have been a marginalized group, and they were the identified patients in America. Now, I want to make this real clear too. There are white people or there are like women who are conservative, and they will say, yeah, women shouldn't be doctors or women should stay in the house and stuff like that, and they're like the Uncle Toms of the women because they blame the victim, they justify the order, and they say it's because of our innate qualities we're inferior. And again, you could say it's genetic Darwinian because they want to maintain the race and they want to be baby makers, and and that's why you find more white women being Trump supporters, the more conservative, because they think that by being submissive and stuff, they're going to help their race, and that, so their beliefs are going to be related to what group they belong to. Belonging is the fourth quadrant, the second quadrant. Belief is the first quadrant, the second quadrant. These are interrelated. But okay, and you're going to find Black people who are also Uncle Toms, like Candace Owens and Kanye West, who are Nazis themselves, and they blame the victim. Kanye West says, oh yeah, the Black people they chose slavery. That's that type of mentality. It's a judgmental mentality. Yes, what my grandpa says is, okay, I don't want to get into details, but it's a judgmental mentality, victim blaming. But then we don't want to say, oh yeah, it's because Kanye West is black and he's stupid because he's black and that's why he's like that. That's the same type of mentality, right? Okay, but then there's also Black people, also like mental patients. I describe Black people are like the mental patients in America because what happens with mental patients is they're already marginalized. A lot of them are beaten up. A lot of them were abused, and then a lot of times a family sends them to the psych ward in order to push them under the rug and to label them. And again, the labels, the belief. If someone believes that they are something, they will start behaving in that way, and it's a stereotype effect. So beliefs affect reality. So they have these labels imposed on them, and now people don't have to look at them as humans or look at them in a complex manner, and they can just look at them in a very stereotyped manner and say, okay, that's a schizophrenic, and they don't have to treat him normally, and they start treating him different, and then he starts acting different, and he was already being treated different to begin with. Maybe a lot of times they're already being labeled. That's and then they start acting out the mental illness, and this is a real thing. It's a suggestibility, and it actually really does happen. And also, I described a lot of schizophrenia and stuff has to do with environmental effects and being marginalized and being mistreated. And the psychiatry system perpetuates that, and they have a motivation. They make a lot of money off of it, and we know that it actually doesn't help the people. The medicine actually increases the symptoms and causes symptoms, and it hurts people, and it makes them perpetual psychiatric patients because it harms them so much and they can't get off of it. So then the people make a lot of money. So even the doctors they might actually believe it because they have an incentive to. They want to belong. That's longing to be and have belongings. So then their beliefs are affected by that. Well, the same thing happened with Black people. And when they were brought to America, there was an economic motivations, and the white people who established a system, they had a belief system. They adopted a belief system that would justify it and perpetuate it. So then what ends up happening is you'll get Uncle Toms who are saying like, oh yeah, we are inferior and we should just submit. And I know friends who are like that. Like one of my friends who's like half white, and I thought it was genetic Darwinism that maybe he's half white and therefore he's a conservative because it's his white genes that are wanting to help the white race. But it also could just be, he was brought up by a conservative pastor dad and stuff. Who himself, I remember his conservative pastor dad said, white people like me because I act like I'm white, but I'm black. So, yeah, so it's a desire to be liked. His desire to belong with the white people. It can be an Uncle Tom thing. And then, but again, my grandpa said that Uncle Tom actually wasn't a bad guy. But this is a stereotypical Uncle Tom, the actual Uncle Tom from the book. But but yeah, so you have those belief systems, and then you even have that with the psychiatric patients. So there's psychiatric patients who don't want to be in the psych wards and stuff, and who don't want to be getting medicine, and they're saying, "Get me the fuck out of here." But then there's some of the patients who are saying, "I need my psychiatry medicine. I love this stuff," because they are the conservatives. They want to maintain the order, and they believe in genetics, and they say, "I was born this way. I have the genetic. It's my proclivities, and I was, my voices, and I need this." And then they say, "And you guys need it too. You guys shouldn't be questioning this." And then the other psych patient's like, "You don't fucking talk for me. I don't want to be here. Get me out of here. They're torturing me." Same type of thing, man. But it's that conservative mentality. For the conservatives, they say, yeah, these psych patients, they're inherently defective. They have, but a liberal is going to look at it. Although a lot of liberals like psychiatry and stuff, but somebody who has more of a liberal mentality, non-fixed mindset mentality, is going to say, listen, there's a lot of environmental factors led to these people being in there, and it's not going to help them. There's a lot of studies that show that people in societies that don't have psychiatry, they don't get mentally ill, and they don't, and their sicknesses aren't perpetuated. But in America, they are. A lot of it has to do with a lot of stress, the overwhelming environment of America, and we have to look at the cases. And yes, there might be a slight genetic component, but all the evidence shows a huge environmental component, and we don't want to judge people and say, oh yeah, but that person's from a good family. How come he's developed it? We don't know all the details, but all we know is this: judging, labeling, stereotyping, it's not helping. What will help is to treat the person in a natural, authentic, respectful manner, and not a sympathetic, sentimental, patronizing manner, but without the prejudice. So it's a quick second question talk.